Good morning, guys.
Shalom Aleichem.
Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim Rambam, thus making the siyum on the Sefer of Kinyan. We would like to dedicate today's class and the siyum in merit of Yaron and Aranit Chassid and their tremendous hatzlacha that's coming now. Amen. We are going to be learning the 3 chapters of Hilchos Avodim, Prakim Zayim, Ches, and Tes. We are starting with Perek Shvi. The 7th chapter is all about a non-absolute severance which will not be effective. In other words, the document that has to be given to an Eved when the Eved is being set free has to absolutely sever him from his subservience to his master. And if there's anything in that document that doesn't fully, absolutely cut off that relationship, then none of it goes into effect. Perek Shvi has 9 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph. It says that Rambam get shichr, right, a bill of release. Sarech sheyeh inyanoi davar hakoyres beinoi ubein adoinav. It must connote that this document is fully severing that connection, meaning v'lo yishar la'adam bo yischus, leaving no rights that the master had in this servant. If a person writes to a servant in the document, you, and all of my property is actually going to be gifted to you. Means he's not only giving him his freedom, he's giving him all of his stuff. But then he adds chutz mimakam ploini, a side of one item, a side of that location, or chutz mitalis ploinis, a side of that talis. It's amazing. He did not hold back any part of his original shibudim. No, you are fully free. And on top of that, all of my things belong to you, aside of one corner. It's amazing. So since in the document there's something that the master is withholding, ein zakoiris, and therefore the entire document doesn't function, and he's not going to be set free. Get bottom. Wow. It's self-understood that he won't acquire anything because this is very important. But it's not only if he holds back some of the shibudim that he had as an eved. The document has to be an absolute document, completely cutting off. If the document is also important for the master, the document is not valid. Halacha b'itz. If Eved brings his document, his will of release, and in it it says atzmacha unechasai kanuyim lach. That's an absolute document. But here we have one document that is bequeathing the Eved, not only him, his freedom, but all of the items of the master. So atzmai kanam. And as we learned yesterday from the 6 dinim, that a get shichrur is similar to a divorce document. One of them is that when you bring a document from one location to the other, as long as in our case the Eved will declare the master is unable to claim the document as a forgery. Such a document does not need to be notarized. That's a final document, which is why atzmei kana v'hadei ben chayden aval anachasim, when it comes to all of the belongings like kana ache yiskay maget b'chaysmav. Wow. And as we have halachis regarding documents that need to be notarized, prior to which can't collect anything, same thing will be over here. Now that's a big chiddush because everything is written in one document. I mean, mimanavshach, is the document authentic? Is the document a forgery? Here we see that concerning the dinim of gittin, it's considered absolutely authentic. Concerning anything else, it's still considered question mark. He didn't even specify you and the property, everything, which includes you. Indeed, and that's what the Gemara calls palgin on dibura. Let's use the words of the Rambam. We divide these words by saying Aval hanechasim she'ein adam koino oisem elo b'rai berura. B'rai berura means not just with a document, but with a notarized document. This is not yet a notarized document. Lo yikna oisem achi yiskayim ashtar. Well, halacha yim. Hameshach v'shnei avadim b'shtar echad. A person owns two slaves and he frees both of them with the same document. Lo kanu atzman, neither of them are free. You have to write a separate document for each one. And by the way, this is where a bill of release to a slave is like a divorce document. During the times that a man was allowed to be married to two wives at the same time, there also we have this halacha that a man cannot divorce both of his wives with the same document. So again, kol nechasav includes they themselves, but he's writing it to two avadim. So af atzman leikanu, none of them are free. None of the belongings belong to them. Everything stays the way it was. However, v'im kasav b'shtei shtarais. But if a master is writing to two of his slaves, and we'll see another detail of exactly what he must write, since it's in two documents, then kanu. However, as we'll see in a moment, each one now becomes an owner of half of the other. So they acquired their half, but for them to become free, one will have to free the other. Because if the master, think about it, is giving all of his belongings to one and all of his belongings to the other, including in his belongings are the slaves.
What don't they need verification?
That's we don't need. We already established that.
No, that was for the slave to be freed. This is for the property.
The property needs verification if they're bringing it correct. Yes, the Rambam already established that. Now, in other words, he acknowledges in each document, he can't write in one document, I'm giving all of my stuff to Reuven. Let's say Reuven is a slave and Shimon is a slave. He's writing in each document, all of my belongings are being given to Reuven and to Shimon. But he's writing all of my property to each one, all of it to each one. Avalam Kasav, if he writes half of my property to Reuven, and he's writing in the same document that he's giving to each one, he's writing this twice, and half to the other, even though he wrote it on two documents, also lekanu klum. Why? Think about it. Because an eved is part of the property. When he's writing in each document, half is given. What does half mean? Half means half is given, but half is not. In other words, he's retaining something. That's the rule that we're learning in this chapter. It has to be a document that does not retain anything for the master. And everything is automatic. If the avadim are not freed, then they cannot acquire anything. So none of it was affected. Halacha dalet. That's what you're writing. As we mentioned, and he remains an eved fully as he was. All of that is beginning with the chapter that a get, shichrur, a bill of release, has to be a davar that's koides beinoy or bein adoinav completely. Oh, it's all of this concept of you not being able to be half. That's because there is a chisaron in the law of a shtar. However, says the Rambam, if money is being used to free a slave, and the example that Rambam gave yesterday, two examples. Let's go with the first one. A third party is giving money to the master by saying, "I'm giving you this money in order for the eved to be free." You know what happens if he gives him? I'm giving you half of his value for half of him to be free. That's fine. That works. Obviously, if the master agrees. Kana means that the eved acquired half of his freedom. And now it turns out it'll be a chetzi eved b'chetzi ben chayden. The issue of davar hakoyres absolutely is only by shtar, not by kesef. We're going back to the beginning of halacha dalet, guys. That loy kana eved chetziyoi b'meshachrin chetzi b'shtar v'ini chetziyoi. So that's why the document didn't fully free him. It's completely not effective. Avol, but if there's a document. But in this document, we divided the eved in half, but none of the halves are retained to the original owner. It's half free and half is sold to someone else. In other words, this document completely severs him from the original owner. Half are you of free, and your other half I'm gifting to someone else. In both cases, the document fully releases the eved from the original owner. It will be effective. And again, the chetzia ben chorin. He'll be an evet to the new master, or to to the guy that bought him, or to the guy that got him as a gift. Another case where you can have this phenomena of half and half. The guy belonged to two people. One of them fully freed the half that he owns. It can even go b'shtar, because that document will only release half, but it's going to be all of what the master owns. And here again, so the Rambam gave us 4 cases where you can have someone who's half slave and half a free person. Now, halacha. This is just giving continuity to the rule that we began in this chapter with, that the document that is affecting the freedom has to be an absolute document. If he writes to her, you are a free woman, but she's pregnant, your vlad, your fetus, is an eved. Is that called holding something back in the eved? The answer is no. The answer is no. He did not hold anything back in the mother. Yes, he held back the fetus, but when we say, let's say, uber yarachimai, it's not that the mother goes after the fetus. It's only in the other way around. Let's go in the other way around. If he writes, you are a shivcha, your fetus is free, that does not free even the fetus. You understand? Because the ubar goes after the mother. And if the mother is remaining a shivcha, that's called he's retaining. If you retain something in a document, none of it is effective. Okay. Now, after the Rambam,
wait. How could he own something that's non-existing, or set it free or not set it free?
A fetus is existing.
But I thought we said it's not existing till it comes into the world before.
That's not absolutely true. We learned that a person can even bequeath something to a son, because Datri shel Adam Kroiv Eitzel Banov.
Okay.
And just to add to what the Kavan is saying, there still must be a difference between if the fetus is going to acquire something else versus the owner releasing the ownership that he has over the fetus. That's easier. Coming back over here, now that we have this phenomena of half and half, now we also understand the din of a shifcha charufa, guys. That Rambam paskins a shifcha charufa. Just to review, if you remember, is a woman who's a half free woman, a half evet kananis, right? A half shifcha kananis. And what happened, guys? If you remember, we just recently learned all these halachas. We just learned also that an evet ivri is allowed to be with a shifcha kananis. Halachically, it's kosher. What happens, guys, if an evet ivri, guys, halkop gives kedushin to this woman that's half slave, half free woman? You have to appreciate how the evet ivri can marry a Yiddish woman. We learned that the Fedish. She's half Yiddish. An evet ivri can be together with the shifcha kananis. The question is the kedushin toifus? See, kedushin is only toifus on a free Jewish woman. So you can say that it's like a half a kedushin is toifus. Now, the din of a shifcha charufa was, if you remember, what happens if someone has a relation with her? So normally a married woman that has a relation is a capital punishment. Here you have this unique din of the malchus and the asham shifcha charufa. But we're not speaking about her being not loyal. A shifcha charufa that has this half a kedushin, guys, think about it. What were to happen now if the master that owns half frees her? What do I mean by that? Since kedushin is toifus in half of her, the only reason why she's not fully mikudeshes is because half of her is a shivcha. The moment you change the status of shivcha, you don't have to give another kedushin for the half. That kedushin that went on half will automatically permeate all of it. Let's read it inside. Shivcha charufa. And that, says the Rambam, will automatically make her a full Eishes Ish Gemura. Here also, Hadeza Meshachred Bebishtar B'Mikasef. Sha'af HaKesef Goyre Shechruroi. Even though there are those opinions who hold that such a woman to be fully freed needs a shtar, that Rambam is paskening, she does not need a shtar. Just Kesef in itself will be enough. She became freed the first half with a document. She needed that document. But it's amazing. Once freedom takes hold, it's easier for it to expand. Just like once the Kedushin took hold, it automatically expands. The freedom automatically expands, and you don't need to have a shtar. Halacha zayin. Right, this is the cases where Beis Hillel was moidel divrei Beis Shammai. The Mishnah Rishayna, the Mishnah Achrayna. So such a phenomena could exist. Question is, do we as a society allow for such a phenomena to exist? Why not? Because a guy who's obligated to have children will not be allowed to marry anyone. Shivcha charufa, a woman is not mechuyev to have children. Even though the Ran says that if she has children, she participates in the mitzvah rabba of Prudavu, but there's no chiyuv. So let's go. Such a guy cannot marry a shivcha. Why can't he marry a shivcha? Because there's a tzad ben choyden in him. He cannot marry a bas choyden because there's an eved in him, right? And a woman, a Yiddish woman is not allowed to marry. A Yiddish woman is not allowed to marry an eved. We're not speaking about an eved divri, guys. We're speaking about an eved. And 1 second, we're speaking about an eved kanani, exactly. When I spoke before about the Shifcha Charufa, was an Eved Divri that married her. Here I'm speaking about an Eved, the Chatzi Eved, he was an Eved Kanani, he became half free and half Ben Choyden. So therefore, Koifen es Rabbi v'oiso oise Ben Choyden. The Beis Din will force the master to free the half. 1 second, he's worth money. Say that. The Koisev Shtar Olav v'Chatzi Damav. You get an IOU. You force the Eved who has no money now to write a promissory note that when I will get money, I'll owe you kach v'kach. That we make such a force, and the Rambam will automatically now explain why we do it. That's only if the Eved is the half and half. The pnei sheho ish mitzuva pinividim. Because, like the Gemara says, Sai the tzad yid in him is chayiv from the mitzvah of prudavu, and even the tzad goyinim loylo toyu bara elo l'shavas yitzara, which is a chiyuv on goyim as well. If you remember, the Gemara brings only that loyal toy bara l'shavas yitzara. So Tosfos asks, why didn't you bring prudavu? One of the answers that Tosfos gives is because you can't say prudavu on the tzad abdu shabai. We're trying to point out that no matter what angle you look at this guy, he's obligated to have kids. Since loyal toy bara is also for goyim, that's why we quote that. And avade the prudavu that a yid is mitzuva in. Aval ashivcha, we allow that to be to short kamoishihi. And what? Because she's not obligated in having children. And what do you do practically? Half and half. You divide it per day. 1 day for her, 1 day for the master. However, don't forget, such a woman cannot get married. When you have a woman who halachically cannot get married, sometimes what will happen, people that are promiscuous will have relations with her. If Beis Din becomes aware of it, then we don't want her to be single and available for all men. That's a case by case. Again, who's going to pay money? No one will pay money. She herself has to obligate herself with a promissory note that when she'll have money, she'll pay the original master half of, whatever he freed. The case of Allah, listen to what's happening. Why did he do that, guys? You understand why he did that? Because now that we said in Allah Zayin, or Beis Hillel was made to Beis Shammai, that what? Koifen es Rabbi to free. What happens if a guy doesn't want to free him? That's a good eitzah. People here in America, what they do is IRS, they write their house based on someone else. You give your Eved, this Chatzi Eved, to your B'nai HaKatan, Beis Din, as a rule, cannot force minors. He's doing that to get out of this force that might come upon him. Doesn't help. Such a trick doesn't help. You know what you do? First, you appoint an administrator that has the right to do whatever is good for the minors. And that apetrupas will write to get shichrut. The kois of olive star choy b'chatzi dama, which is amazing. Now, there's one nuance over here.
So why do we need a apetrupas? He's alive. The father is alive.
No. The father doesn't own it. So the father doesn't want to do it. The cotton cannot be forced.
Right.
But since based in Bechlal, if he would have been a Yassim, they have the right to appoint someone who Taka can be like his representative. They make a representative. And they tell the Apetrupas, you adult Apetrupas, do Chazarein. Go free him. You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, I understand. I just don't understand why the katan. Where is the dad?
The dad was trying to finagle out. The dad is a.
So, but whether he does or not, where the Apetrupas legally can kick in?
The Bezdin has the right to appoint an Apetrupas even when there's a dad. In other words, when the dad is doing the wrong thing, you put an Apetrupas. Now, another nuance. Sometimes children become very connected to people, to things. What's it called? A security blanket. So he gave it to us. By the time Bezdin Chap, what happened? This guy already got so connected to the Eved. So look at the sensitivity. This guy has to be freed. What happens? The cotton became very attached to him. So you know what you do to disattach a child from someone? You give the child something that the child wants more. What does the child want more?
Kissing.
Money. You see. In other words, you don't want to hurt. You do it in a way where the child agrees. If you're going to agree to give him his freedom, you're going to get that amount of money. Asach Geld.
We learned this with the karka.
Yes, we did. Which is why until he's 20, if he inherited the land, he cannot sell it. And the final halach in this chapter, halach says, Shchiv Miram, Shekosav Kol Nechosav LaAbdoi. And we had learned in the sugi of Shchiv Miram that on one hand, even his words are like a kinyan. On the other hand, his words only go into effect after he passes away, which means that once we establish that whatever he declared is as a matna shchiv mera, remember what we learned, if he gets well, none of it goes into effect. Here is the exception. Shchiv mera avdoi. It means you and all of my property, and then this guy has it for shalema. So even though the rule is chayzer ben achasim, because that's the rule of matna shchiv mera, if you get better, ain't no chayzer be'eved. We read that Rambam mentioned it also before. Why is that? Yotza olav shein ben chayden. Guys, this we're going to put in the category of a takonas chachamim. Takonas chachamim means, let me say the way some understand pshat. The chachamim are saying, Yakir, that certainly this was the kavana of this guy that was a shchimina. Because being a slave and being free is something so essential. You can't dangle freedom. You're free and you're not free. No one does that. So even though it was in one sentence, and Bechlal, the umdana is, the matna shchivmana is that it should only go into effect for achar misa. He wants to have the thing that if I'm going to get better, benes, he never meant, the Chachamim said, he never meant it regarding the Eved. Once you call a guy free, he taka meant to give him his freedom. Okay, we're moving on to today's second chapter, which is the second to last chapter in Sefer Kinyan. Perek Shmini is all going to be about certain actions, certain things that if the master does, Beis Din will force the master to free the Eved. Now, we learned in the previous chapter the concept of Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Choyden, but there they did nothing wrong. Fakert, one of the examples was there are two partners. One partner freed the Eved. Here we're going to learn about certain things that if you do it, now you have to free the Eved. Perek Shmini is today's bigger chapter. Perek Shmini has 21 halachas. Let's begin with halacha. Says the Rambam, Hamoicheres Abdel Goyim. Just that. There's a knas. Guys, this is a knas. An Eved Knani, who, as we'll learn today soon, actually should go to the mikveh. Not to become a Jew, but to become a Jewish Eved. Undertakes upon himself to keep many of the mitzvahs of the Torah. To the point that if they are freed, they become bona fide Jews. And if you sell such an Eved to a Goy, you are not allowing the Eved to keep mitzvahs. We're going to learn exceptions. But that's the general rule. You have to eat kosher. You have to keep Shabbos. We're talking about all of the mitzvahs that women are obligated, which is almost all the mitzvahs in the Torah the Eved has to keep. So you're not allowed to own an Eved. You were machayev him to be as a Yid, so to say. We can even say the word half Jewish. This is illegal, half Jewish. And then put him in a setting where he can't keep what a Jew has to do. So the Chachamim made a penalty that we forced the master, Yotze ben Chayden. Now, Yotze ben Chayden, you think about it, he's free. We got a problem. How did that help? I'm asking you. He's free, but so what? But he belongs to the Goy. So it's not that he's free. Now you have to go and you have to redeem him. And you know what redeeming is? Let's say you sold him for $1,000. You have to pay up to 10 times. Here it's dafka 10, not more, but up to 10 times is big. And now that you bought him back, now you own it again. No, now that you bought him back, go give him a get shechur. The eighth. What happens? Even though you're offering him 10 times the amount, at least there's a limit. This is in the category of knas. The knas ain't goyven oisai. The done and boy ella based in mumchim. The guys, every time that Rambam writes based in mumchim, Rambam means based in that has real smicha. Real smicha ended more or less at the end of the times of the Gemara. Real smicha was reenacted in the times of the Rif. The Rif had real smicha, even though there was a little bit of a debate about it. Real smicha was reenacted again, according to almost mamish everyone aside of one big Rav in Yerushalayim in the times of the Beis Yosef. And real smicha, to a certain degree, was reenacted bismanenu. And who was made the head of the Sanhedrin? Rabbi Zajac Yisrael. Just to know that, and nothing, it didn't pan out yet. He passed away already.
Rabbi, how come in Rambam they don't give that little introduction like you said, that when you have a slave, he's almost half a Jew, and then when you sell him, you're out?
Because then I would not have a job. That Rambam had rachmanas on a guy like me.
So it's really meant that...
It's really meant that as much as, if let me word it this way, Yaron, that Rambam was so brilliant. If someone would learn that Rambam from the beginning and remember what he wrote, what I said he already wrote. If he's writing something for the first time, that Rambam was like, he gave all the information you need to know. That was his purpose.
So you're reminding what was
I'm reminding myself what I already learned many times that I myself forgot. Correct.
So he does do that, but just not every time.
Correct. And let me say like this. And when you learn the Mishnayos, is not that. Because when you open up a Mishnah, if you go from the beginning without having a teacher giving you a lot of information, you will not know from your head to your feet. Rebbe wrote a Mishnah in a way that you need to have a teacher, which it keeps it Torah Shabal Peh. Torah Shabal Peh, because Shabal Peh means I need to have someone that's transmitting. The Rambam put everything on an order. No one did what he did before. No one did what he did after. He's unique in the Jewish people. Let's go back. Now, if the Moicher died, we don't penalize the children to repurchase it or l'shachar. Now, I want to say something important over here, if I'm not mistaken, that when we say in the beginning, Yotza ben Chayrim, I want to make it clear. Does he need to have a document of emancipation? I want to clarify that. So yeah, the Rambam writes when he buys him back, he has to free him because he bought him back. I want you to know that if you sold him to a goy, halachically, and he ran away from the goy, he doesn't even need to have a document of emancipation. What's the power of Hefker, Bez and Hefker was so strong, the Knas was so strong that the only issue is that he's not going to be a Ben Chayrin because he legally belongs to a guy. So you have to buy him back. When you buy him back, now you have to write him another document. You understand what I'm saying? Yotza ben Chayrin means that if he were to escape from the goy, he doesn't even need to have a document.
Sorry, Rabbi. When does he become a full Jew? It's off topic.
At this moment, the moment that he's free. Even though, if I'm not mistaken, he should go to the mikvah again to be mekabel the mitzvahs again. But that's a wrinkle. If I'm not mistaken, that's not essential. When he's free, he becomes a Jew. Now, a full-fledged Jew. Halacha base. Love alavdim in a goy. Another case. You didn't sell him to a goy. You took a loan. The guy doesn't. But the lender, the malva tells the malva's a goy. The malva says to the Jew, "Okay, I'll lend you money, but I'll only do it like this. That if you don't pay me back by that and that date, I will own the eved." Even though you might pay him right away, knas. Miyad. That's part of the knas. But if you told the guy, listen, if in that and that date comes and I don't pay it back, tikna ma'aseh yadav, that's something else. Tikna ma'aseh yadav means that the work that he does will go for you. Then in such a case, there's no knas. Now, guys, another case. This other case, not to confuse. No one borrowed money on the eved. The guy lent the money stam. Happened to be that now that the Jew is not paying, the guy goes and he takes possession of the eved. That's different. That's the case over here. Or people came to the Jewish owner, Mitzayim, Ubikshu Hargoy, right? Mafia comes, in Brazil, kidnappers come, bandits come, in America, the IRS comes, they begin to harass a person, and the guy says, whoa, take it easy. Take my Eved, don't kill me. That's not, there's no kanas over there. This guy was put in a very impossible position. When a person is he feels that he's in danger and he's saving himself, there's no penalty over here. Because then what happened was the Eved was taken against the will from the master. The guy didn't even want to be in that position. He did not lechatchila agree, I'm going to borrow money, putting him as a guarantee. No. Halacha gimel. You sold your Eved to one of the king's avadim, or one of the king's officers, even though these are people from whom you have a certain amount of fear, but if they did not initiate this process, because you could have, if you needed to appease them, you could have appeased them by giving them other money. You have to study every case. Because if you are partially guilty, if you could have gotten away with something else, there's the big knas. In other words, we learned a concept of mechira lisman kosov, just like we learned by a gift. People remember from halachas, right? From sukkahs, matana almanas lahachsid. It can be almanas lahachsid lamachar. It can be miyad. There's a concept called mechira lisman kosov. So if you sold them lisman kosov, or mechore chutz mimelachtoy, all you sold them for was not for his work. So what do you sell them for? So guys, a eved, if a guy owns a shifcha, Kananis, whoever has a relation with a shifcha Kananis, as we learned this week, even if an Eved Ivri has relations with her, even if, God forbid, a free Jew has relations with her, a shifcha Kananis, his child will be property of the master. Now, no one can get a Jew to have a relation with a shifcha Kananis. You could have Eved Ivri sometimes. Here, it's different. Here, a guy wants to own a Eved, not for work, just to have them tell the Eved, okay, what you owe me is you're going to have relations with her. He wants to have more of it. So he was sold to the guy not to work for the guy. What, yeah? Larbiya. Or chutz min mitzvahs. He tells the guy, listen here, my Eved has to keep Shabbos, has to keep kosher. I'll sell him to you as long as you will never stop him from keeping the mitzvahs. Or chutz mi Shabbos yomim tovim, which is the bulk of the issue that will come about. Shabbos and Yom Tov, what is 24% that we don't work? All these cases are a doubt, and therefore, how do you apply this whole thing that when there's a doubt, when it comes to money, where does it play out? That im tafas or evekededamav l'raboy. It's amazing. Don't forget that the rabbi, whenever the rabbi violates what he cannot do, so what happens is there is a knas that the rabbi has to redeem him. This Eved goes, he knows where his original master had his stuff. He took enough money from the rabbi to give to his new goyish rabbi to say, listen, take the money and let me free. If he did it, it's effective. And we allow this Eved to use this money on behalf of the rabbi. Now, the rabbi cannot be forced to do it because the rabbi can say, these cases are of doubt. If it's a doubt, I'm not mechuyev to go through the knas and pay ad eser l'damav, but the Eved can do it on behalf of the rabbi. This has nothing to do whether the guy to whom he was sold to is an actual idol worshiper, or even if he sold him to a ger toshav. A ger toshav, guys, is a person who actually undertook formally to keep the 7 laws of Lech because God said so. Even if it was given over to a kuti, even during the times that a kuti still had a yid of, we just learned yesterday, right? A kuti, not by the times of the Rambam, before, had a din of a yid. Because none of these people keep mitzvahs properly. You understand? However, what happens if this Eved was sold to a yid that's a meshumad? A meshumad means a yid that became a Christian, or he became a member of another religion. Again, hadez a suffix. And again, whenever there's a suffix, now comes a new topic. And we're speaking about actions that the master does, that the Chazal says, you did that? Either he's free or you have to free him. Next is, If he belonged to a rabbi that lives in the Holy Land, you cannot force people to move out of the Holy Land. If you sold your Eved to another Yid, to a Jew who lives in Chutz La'aretz, guys, Yatsa ben Chaydim, this is another knas. Now, let me go again. Yatsa ben Chaydim. Now, we think about it in the document of sale. The first master doesn't own him. The first master doesn't have to free him. But Yatsa ben Chaydim, but the second master bought him. So here we say, the second master does have to write the document for no money. For Avdu Adamin. Now we got an issue over here. Hold on. Both parties were guilty here. The seller shouldn't have sold. The buyer shouldn't have bought. If there's a money loss, at least go 50-50. No. Only the purchaser. So the Rambam says, only the Lekeach. And for the Rambam, if he wouldn't have bought it, he would not go out to Chutz La'aretz. In other words, who was the one that violated? You should think about it. When there's a seller and a buyer, and an item is going from one to the other, the Moiched lives in the Holy Land. When did he go to Chutz La'aretz? When he entered the dominion of the purchaser. So that is where the sin happened. Let me word it differently. Let's say that when there's a Moiched and a Lekeach, the Moiched has to relinquish his ownership, and then the Lekeach acquires. The relinquishment is not the sin. The relinquishment is not the problem. The problem is the acquisition, because that is when he entered. So we view the Lekeach to be the sinner.
When you sell a stolen item, who's responsible, Rabbi? I'm sorry. Isn't it both of them?
With your permission, Rabbi, the seller is selling it. Right? You could have easily sold it to someone who kept him in the land of Israel. Okay,
Yakir is saying these words, that if you sold a stolen article, no matter to whom you sold it, you're violating. When you sell an Eved, the act of selling of an Eved is allowed if you were to sell it to someone who lives in Israel. So here, all of the guilt is on the hand of the Lekeach. Now, right, Kibush Yachid, or even Akoy, guys, Akoy was not conquered by the Oil Bubble. We did learn this in the Rambam. See, everything was already in here. Even though it was conquered by Oil Mitzrayim, the Rambam Paskins, Chevra, that Kibush, that Kedusha Rishayna, Kitchel Shaitim, Eloy Kitchel Asad Love. And that Kedusha was undone because anything that was a Kibush, if we took possession because of Kibush, so then when the Babylonians were koivishing from us, their Kibush was mafkia our Kibush. Oila Bavel by Ezra was not through Kibush. That was done through Chazak. That's why whatever we settled, Bisman Bayesheni, is holy until today. But coming back over here, Akoy is not holy. And therefore, it's Halach Zayin, Ben Bavel.
What I was saying, Akoy is not part of us?
No, Akoy is not part of the holy land. The Rambam already wrote, we already had that before. Halach Zayin. Yo, Ben Bavel, it's good to know, Yakir.
No.
Now you know. But 1 second, when Mashiach will come, it's definitely part of the boundaries that God gave to the Jewish people.
So 2 days, do they Mechuyot 1 day or 2 days Pesach?
That's something else.
And like you know that it is 2 days.
That's something else. That has to do that if Bisman Bayesheni, because of there being a large settlement of Eden there, if Adam would go there, has to do not only with the Kedusha, has to do with did the Shluchim get there before Pesach, before Sukkot. Okay, right. Allah Chazai. Ben Bavel Shenasa Isha Beretz Yisrael. Here we go. So he marries a woman, and he marries her in the Holy Land. And when he married her, it was clear that they are moving to his country of Babel. Now, if she brings an Avadim of Shvachais, I know there's a whole shmuz over here where the Rambam is only speaking about Nechsem Eloy, which it fits easy. Some say that the Rambam is even speaking about Nechsem Tzayim Barzel. It's harder to understand it that way. But let's just read the words of the Rambam. If you have Avadim of Shvachais that continuously belong to her, but during the marriage, their Maisa Yadayim belongs to him. So he was the one that moved them in. He was the one that moved them. Do we penalize him? Safik. Hare'elu Safik. Im heim kimisha machra oisam l'chutz la'aretz. Why machra? Because since he has the usufruct right of marriage, it's like a mechira. or they're not mechurim loy because she owns them. Halacha ches evet sheyatza achar Abba l'surya. This is important. So we established that you cannot sell him to someone else. Forget about selling, guys. If you own an evet and you're moving now, you have two homes. You have your country home. You're going to Surya. You're not forcing your evet to go out. The evet goes after you. Now that the evet removed himself to Surya, now that he's there, you sell him there. You have to chap. You did nothing wrong. You didn't sell him the chutz la'aretz. He went there after you. So now eBay as chus. The evet lost his chus. The evet does not go out to his freedom. So that's why we say, since the evet chose to go after the rabbi, and that was a definitive move, so he lost his merit. Aval, if like in my example, which was a wrong example, the rabbi has two homes. He went there, he goes back. The evet following the rabbi, in his mind, he's not permanently leaving the Holy Land. Yes, and here again, who do we penalize? The main sinner is the purchaser. In other words, he will lose all the money. The meicher doesn't have to return the money. The koifen as a lekeach le'shacharer. Chavra halachetes evet she'amar la'alis le'etz Yisrael. Guys, if an eved will learn the Rambam, he'll figure out how to get it. You're an eved that belongs to a master b'chutz la'aretz. You were never sold b'chutz la'aretz, and you wake up one morning and you say, "My dear master, mitzvah yishuv eretz Yisrael, or beloshen hatzionistin, let's make aliyah koifin es rabbi la'alasimai." Yeah, you force the rabbi. Oy yim karois elamishal le'olasham. If the rabbi doesn't want to do the mitzvah, he has to sell him to someone who's in Eretz Yisrael. Another thing, in other words, we're not selling him. You live in the Holy Land. You want to make a move. You want to make yirida. You cannot take your eved. Says the Rambam b'din zeh b'chol zman b'afilu b'zman hazeh. What's the chiddush of the zman hazeh? It's not just b'zman habayis. No, that this din is. When the Rambam wrote this, Eretz Yisrael was biyad hagoyim. It was in the hands of the Muslims. So you would think, no, 1 second, Melech Eretz Yisrael is tachas shlita of Yidden that keep mitzvahs. It's about the mitzvahs. But if the Eretz Yisrael was under the dominion of a government that they don't value the mitzvahs, but the Rambam biyad goyim, still it's better to live in Eretz Yisrael than to live in the most Jewish of neighborhoods. Which Muslims? The other ones, Rabbi? The ones that kill you if you don't convert. That's why the Rambam's family ran away to Egypt. No, wait before the Shiites and the Sunnis. Which ones are more? Which ones behead more than the others? The ones that behead more, not behead less. Halacha Yud. Another din. How great is this? Forget about. He didn't tell his rabbi, "Let me make aliyah." You know why? Because if he would tell it to his rabbi, like we just learned, the rabbi won't give him his freedom. He'll sell him to a Jew in Israel. This guy, Pashut, picked himself up and he ran away to Eretz Yisrael. You know what that does? Amazing. He cannot be returned to be a slave. And for all of Nemar Batayda, that's the pasuk in Parshas Kisei saying, do not return a slave to the master. And what do we do? I the din of the mamayna, for din of the mamayna, you get an IOU. The yichtav of star chayv damav. Acha tasik yadav yitanloy. That's the worst case scenario. No, I owe you. I owe you. He doesn't want to because he knows his eved ain't ever going to pay him. I'm sorry. Mafkiyan based in a shibudin all of the. This is unbelievable. In other words, this that we mentioned, like when we began in the beginning of this Perek Halacha Aleph, when we say that Hamoicher is Abdul Gam Yotze ben Chayrin, so we emphasize Yotze ben Chayrin. You don't even need to get shikhr. That Baruch men Agoy, that because of the power of Hefker, Bez and Hefker, they can release. This is, you know what? This is tantamount for the very few cases by Kedushin where we say that you're a Mekadesh, Adat the Chachamim, Afkino Rabban and Kedushim. You don't even need a get. It's a big thing. This, unlike normally Koifin to give a get, but you need a get. Here you don't even need it. You need to give a get. If this guy doesn't want to give the get, Basin says, you know what? He doesn't even need your get. That's such a powerful tool. Well, halacha yudal. Eved zeh shebarach l'chutz la'aretz, shebarach la'aretz. And we're saying that ein, right? Ein machzin loisel la'avdis. So as we mentioned, the I don't care wherever you are behind ma'achayra hapardoid. Once an Eved Kanani becomes free, harei hu ger tzedek. That's the rule. Again, I just want to add, no, that Rambam writes, guys, in Hilchos Yisuri Bia, that he has to go to the mikvah. No, he became a convert. We're going to learn this soon. When he becomes an Eved properly means we don't want for an Eved to be kigoy under the ownership of a Yid. We want for the Eved to be toivel l'shem avdus. He goes to the mikvah l'shem avdus, but that initiates his conversion. Now that he's free, he has to go to the mikvah again, but he has to go to the mikvah and he'll become a ger. Now, we learned not so long ago about the dinim of oina'ah, that we're not allowed to verbally oppress a Yid. On top of that, since a convert is even more humble, we have to be super sensitive. And if someone, God forbid, oppresses, wrongs a ger verbally, they are violating 2 lavim, really 3 lavim. There is another lav for this person. Someone who was an Eved is even more humbled. Again, you have different versions. I have the word shemoina oisa, moina here or ma'ana. Here we're going back to the din of deriding him, right, of verbally speaking down to him. And there's a special pasuk b'tziva olav shenemar that im chayesha b'kirbacha batoyv loy soynenu, which also refers to Einos Devarim, specifically to the Eved that became free. You are, this is, guys, remember, there's another law called loy sil chatzenu. That means not to abuse. We already learned above why the Torah gives these two lashonos. But even in the law of loy soynenu, there are 3 different psukim of loy soynenu with these words. Number 1, as a Yid, he's a Jew. The Torah writes that loy soynu isha samisa. Isha samisa means a Jew, a fellow Jew. He's a fellow Jew. On top of that, he's a convert because a Eved becomes a ger, the ger loy soyna. And on top of that, as we just quoted, the unique pasuk for this Eved that became free. Mishum loy soynanu. And on top of that, so really it's 4 lavim, but just using the words of oina'ah, you have 3. Halacha yud beis. Hakoyna Eved men hagoyim stam means that when you bought him, it wasn't clear from the outside that this guy has to become a proper Evet Kanani, which would mean Mila and Tefillah l'shem Avdus. He didn't say that. And he didn't want to do that. You cannot force Judaism. So what do? Megalgal and imai. Megalgal means that you give him leeway. You let him roll. For how long? Only for 12 months. And during that time, hopefully you will be able to appeal to him. Now listen, you bist an Eved. You mekabel the mitzvahs. It's wonderful. You cannot own him for more than the 12 months. That's because you bought him stam. It's very important. There was no stipulation was made. Or you can sell him l'chutz la'aretz. But if the Eved himself made such a condition, now it's interesting. You know, the Rambam doesn't write that the Rabbi Rishon. It's the Eved. It's about the Eved's concern. The Eved says, listen, a Jew is buying me. Oh my God. Don't give me no bris milah. I know my chavit. I don't need any of that. So you can't keep him because that was clearly spoken out. And also, if you want, it's also, you can sell him to the guy or you can sell him l'chutz la'aretz. Now, there's one thing we should know that a goy living in Eretz Yisrael must undertake to keep the Shana Mitzvahs v'nei noach. That's a separate thing. It's not negay. That will have to happen regardless. Goyim that live in the Holy Land have to undertake to keep Shana Mitzvahs v'nei noach. How great would that be? One of them is not to murder. Machai. That will resolve all the issues.
Rabbi, can Eved, if you murder by forever, can run to Ir Miklat as a Eved? Will Ir Miklat be accepted? And what does it mean about his status as an Eved? And is it for him?
Okay, no. A guy that kills, there's no such a thing as the Ir Miklat for a guy.
No, Eved.
I know Eved Ivri for sure can run. The question Eved Kanani, that's your question.
No, but Eved Ivri belongs to someone. So what's his status now in the Ir Miklat?
He works for his master online on Zoom. Okay, right then. Evet Shemal, the Tov L'Shem Avdus. Now this Evet himself, Hipel Atzmei Liga Yosois, he allowed himself to be captured by bandits. If the Ein Rabbi Yochel, this is an if. In other words, if bandits, like in Brazil, kidnappers took you, if you get him out, you have to. If you cannot free him, Loi B'din Yisrael Dinu Olam, Harei Mutar Loi Litol Dam of Min Hagoyim. It was Amal Rasela Eved to a goy. What happens if, even though my Eved was negligent, and now he's under goyim? Goyim took him. The goyim that took him are saying, we're honest people. Oh, we're keeping him, but we want to pay. We'll pay. I'm not allowed to sell him to them. But once he's already taken, it's called Yamatzal Miyadim. You're not getting him back anyway. If you'll be the auction, you can't sell him to goyim. All the end will be is that he'll be by the goyim anyways. And the geld you won't have. So then, you are allowed, you can make you're only getting paid. But you have to have a get shichrur. As we keep on learning, other than the exceptions where the Chachamim, because of a knas, enacted this amazing power of you don't even need to get shichrur. Normally, you're mafkid. So there's the king and hama'os that you can be mafkid, and then there's the king and haguf. The king and haguf can only be severed with a proper document. Again, the king and haguf goes down to the yarshim. So hayoydish koisav leget shichrur. Halacha yudalid evet sheborach mebeiso asurim. In this yashmenu rabbi. So because there's the din of the mamoin tzad. So then, once the monetary connection, subservience is severed, so then he's free. But again, Yush is only for money. Yush is not for king and haguf. So the money part is released. And now, an Eved was taken captive. We're speaking about taken captive by Goyim.
No,
Befanav. When you find, and too late, you had Yush. Eved was taken captive. Here again, in the church, so now he's no longer financially the possession of. Kol hapoy the oisel l'shem Eved. Now these goyim Eved shenishba, right? That's not Beis Hasurim. These guys, kidnappers, they want to sell him. If another Jew buys him, so then yishtabed boy. So then he will belong to them, to the Rabbi Sheni. If someone redeemed him, you understand, they paid his ransom, but they did it like Kavana ben Chayden, then indeed there's a ben Chayden. And what will be the din? And Rabbi Rishon will have to write a get shechna. Just going back to it. But if the original owner never gave up, he'll get his money back. But he'll go back to his original owner. It just makes sense. And if someone else came, the first rabbi did not have Yush. A guy, a big hero comes, he's redeeming the Eved. How great is that? It's amazing. Why doesn't the Rabbi Rishon have to pay him? I'll tell you why. Because this guy did not redeem him for the Rabbi Rishon, which means he did not redeem him l'shem Abdus. He redeemed him l'shem ben Chayden. Rabbi Rishon says, I don't connect that to me. I owe you nothing. Just like the Rabbi Rishon was wrong when the kidnapper stole him, this new guy was wrong. He wronged himself. If he redeemed him l'shem Abdus and he's an Eved Rabbi Rishon, then he has to pay him. And if not, this guy shkoyach to you, and the Rabbi Yisha gets him back. Halacha Tazayin. Make sure you learn your Rambam. Don't throw money away. Eved shaso Rabbi Apoitika lebal chayvay. So there's a creditor, and he writes specifically on this Eved that you will take possession of this Eved as a repayment of a debt. Can you imagine, Yaron? I owe you money. You only lent me money because I designated my Eved as you're going to take him. do I still own this Eved enough to free him? Yes, I do. And now I free him. We don't say that since the Eved was designated for another person, for the creditor, I don't have the right. I have the right to free him. Now, there's one issue. The issue is that this other guy, my creditor, thinks he owns him. Why does he think? Because he's not Yaron. He doesn't learn the Rambam. We never want a scenario where someone thinks they own an Eved when he's really a non-Eved. And what do you do, therefore? This is just like a Marasayan. The koife as balchoive l'shachri gam hu, and that's from the Tikkun Olam Sugya. Mipnei Tikkun Olam. Shola yivka by la'achazman and tell him you're my Eved. It's really just because my Eved was designated as a guarantee to you that lent me money, he doesn't belong to you. He belongs to me. And if I was mishachred him, it was effective. Halacha Yud Zayin, Eved shehisiyoi rabbi bas choyren, which is something that may not happen. Everyone knows that an Eved Kanani cannot marry a Jewish free woman. If a man is saying, I'm marrying you to a free woman, what is he saying? He's saying, I am going to free you. That's basically how we interpret it. Because he's doing something that is only to be done to a free person. Or if he puts on him tefillin shel rosh, really, even tefillin shel yad is something that only men are mechuyev and not women. And therefore, doing it also is some indication, but it's not enough. Because there's something unique about the head tefillin. It's pe'er and it's barabim. It means he's doing something that clearly indicates you're no longer an Eved. That's the way he's saying you're not an Eved. Or you, that Rambam puts on him, yeah. Not that the Eved put it in the presence of the Rabbi. That's not enough. He put it on the Eved. He's telling the Eved, you go read from the Torah. And these are unique. These actions is called, it's megaladas. It reveals that the other wants to free him. Yatzal Lechedus. Yatzal Lechedus doesn't mean he's free. Yatzal Lechedus means so guys, I'll give you an example. If an Eved makes an Eved to be a Nazir, so there is a din that, what did we learn? The Rabbi takes the Eved and he tells him drink wine. He forces him to drink wine because he doesn't have the right to make such an Eved. No, it's normally when someone makes an Eved, you can make hafaras nadarim, but you don't need to do hafaras nadarim. Here, because you're the master, you can force him to go against the Eved. So the Rabbi had such an option. If the Rabbi Dafke did not do that, the Rabbi was made for Neder. What does that show? That the Rabbi is treating him like a ben choyrim. Here again. No, that you can be koifa like him, and the Rabbi was not koifa him, which he could have done. He treated him like a free person. He told him move for law. With the Beis Din, however you need to do it. Or if the Rabbi was a yachad mumcha, then also yatzal l'chayim, because shekiven shaloi kafa oisai. In the case where, as a master Eved relationship, he was halachically able to be koifa. Giladatoi. It's all a Giloi das. It's
interesting that Rambam used the words mufarlach, the law mutarlach, integrations of nedarim.
Very good, because the Torah, if you remember, hataras nedarim is oisius hatuluyim ba'avir. That's the end of the first chapter in Chagiga. That's part of the Torah Shabbat Peh. That there's nowhere in the Torah written hataras nedarim. The Torah only speaks about hafaras. Mefer neder is done by the father, by the husband. So the Rambam is using the lashon of the scripture. The neshama of these halachas is that once the rabbi is megaladas, that's it. There's no more shibud moment. You can't change your mind, because once you released your hold on his moment value, that's it, kaput. It's a one-way street now. From now, only I get shichrud. But kaifin oisai lichted get shichrud, even though it was not yet written. However, avalim lovim avdoi. Guys, your kids are too young. You're going to soon. You're going to borrow money from your kinderlach. I love it. No, geshmak away. But you out of money, and they have a few $100. It's so cute. So halavai. Our kids should be so wealthy 1,000 times more than us. Gavaldik. So if a guy is borrowing money from his Eved, does that mean he's making into a free person? Or not mufsoim, he put on tefillin in front of the rabbi. Not you gave him an aliyah. He got himself called up. That's not so much. And even though the rabbi was not moicha, that's not enough. Many times, you not being moicha is because you don't even feel there's a need. You want to play like a Jew? Put on tefillin. It's no big deal. I think the fuss that men are making with women with tefillin is a guzma. It's a guzma. But they're not mechuyev to do it. I know the Ramah says that you're moicha. Okay, there's so many other things that we can be moicha in.
It's like if I were to tell Bloom I'm going to Vegas for 4 days, she's just gonna laugh. That's it.
I don't know about any of that. Okay, let's go back. Now, another thing. Guys, if you remember, there are two separate isurim. There's an isur on the Jew to teach a goy Torah. There's an issue on a goy to learn Torah other than that which he has to learn. And similarly, there's an isur on a person to teach his avdei Torah. But here again, we don't say that if he taught his evet Torah, that means that he's freeing him. That we don't say. Lo yatsa l'cheiros. Okay. And also, just to make it clear that there are many halachas that an evet has to know, because now that an evet is mechuyev to keep all the mitzvahs that a woman has to keep, maybe that's chat. So what? Yeah, I can't teach him Torah. Hashem Shmaitze, he doesn't have to know, but what I'm teaching him, in the rabbi's mind, it's simply for him to know what he cannot do. He's mechuyev in all of the shas haloisas. Halacha yutes. Halakeyach evet min hagoyim.
But on one hand, we're learning that we're asking within the 12th month to have the goy taking upon himself mitzvahs. The
mitzvahs that he's mechuyev to keep.
We're learning that you're not supposed to teach
the Torah that he doesn't have to learn. No, so he doesn't have to learn Hilchos Tefillin. And even if the rabbi taught him Hilchos Tefillin,
but eventually when he's going to free out,
that's why lo yatsa l'cheiros.
So when is going to be the moment that he allows it?
Once he gets freed, like or once you decided to free him, like when a person is coming to become a ger, he can learn Torah. He could learn Torah because he's on the process of becoming a ger. Again, we spoke about the original owner, when you make a sale, relinquishes his ownership. So when the guy sold him, the guy doesn't own him. When the kinyan was made. For you to really acquire him, he has to go to the mikvah l'shem avos. That's a window that if this guy is smart and he goes to the mikvah for his freedom, he'll become free. Guys, he does it in the presence of his adaim. That's key. Amazing. And even if he's not b'fnei rabbi, he can still get the window, but at least this person has to say, I'm going to the mikvah, yay, freedom, and that's it. The act of the rabbi grabbing onto him is a manifestation of you belong to me. And he dunks him into the mikvah. Halacha chav, Yisrael should talk up big goy katan. He takes possession of a minor goy. Oisha matzatino goy. It will l'shem ger, harei ze ger. L'shem evet, harei ze evet. L'shem ben choyren, harei ze ben choyren. And the final halacha in this chapter, halacha chaf aleph. What happens if you have a ger? Shekadlu shevchoisav va'avadav v'tavlu b'fanav. In other words, you have a ger that owns avadim. Prior to the owner, prior to the ger completing his gerus, same concept. His possessions went to the mikvah. Kanu atzman. In other words, what you need is you have to make sure that you are a yid, and like we learned in the end of Halacha Yutes, if the master is not yet Jewish, you cannot, even if you physically toivel them, it doesn't do anything. They're not becoming your eved, you're not a yid yet. So make sure if you are a convert, if you are in the process of converting and you have avadim and you want for them to continuously be your avadim, the seder has to be, first you complete your gerus, which is going to the mikvah. Kabbalah some mitzvahs under the water.
He's a ger toshav.
He's a ger on the process of a ger tzedek.
In the process,
not done yet. He's about to do it. So again, the Rambam is just concluding this chapter by certain windows where avodim are able to acquire their freedom. Chavre, let's go now to the final chapter, and this is the seal of Sefer Kinyan. Perek Shi. Can I ask you a simple question? How does one become an Evet Kanani? So it's amazing. In the beginning, by Evet Ivri, by Om Ivriya, the Rambam explained how they become. Now the truth is that when the Rambam told us Evet Kanani, the Chamisha, the Rachim, I think, or the Sheet, that he becomes an Evet, the Rambam is explaining how this were to happen. The Nakuda is that the Torah does not allow for people to kidnap others. And if you kidnap a person, and you sell him, that's violating the 10 Commandments, and there's a capital sin. So we're speaking about Pasha, how do you become an Evet? Halacha, Perek Shi has 8 halachas. It's also about what you may or what you may not use an Evet for. Halacha Aleph. Yisrael Shaba Ashifcha Kananis, which he shouldn't have. There's no, if the child is born by a shifcha, there's 0 yichus. And what did we learn in the last chapter, Yaron? That sometimes if a man does something, it's megaladas that he's freeing her. We don't say that if a man had a relation with his shifcha kananis, datoi to be meshachrer her. We don't say that. And therefore she's a shifcha. Harei zeh havlad evet kanani l'chol davar. Meaning, v'nimkar v'nikna u'mishtamshem by le'olam k'shar avadim. That was the way we explained the kitzah yesterday, how a mamzer can become tahor through such a mechanism. Halacha beit. Echad ha'koyin evet kanani miYisrael. Doesn't matter who you bought him from, or if you bought an evet kanani from a ger toishav, or if you bought an evet kanani from a goy. Shukavush tachas yodeinu, that's living under our jurisdiction. Or if you bought him from a guy from another nation, it makes no difference. You bought the Evet Kanani, he continues to be an Evet Kanani. As we learned in the previous chapter, there has to be a tefillah l'shem avdus. V'chein ger toishav, oy hagoy, shu kavush tachas yodeinu, oy echad nisharo umais, yesh loy limkar es atzmoy li Yisrael la'eved. So as we had the din of an Evet Divri, Yaron, a person can sell himself. We learned only when you're very poor. A goy can choose to sell himself as an Evet Kanani. That's another way you become an Evet Kanani. Because if you opted into Avdus, as we have a similar concept, lahavdol by Yidin, by the Om Ivriya, by only by Bito Haktano, with all of the restrictions that we learned. But the concept we have by goy, as it says in Parshas Bahad, Behem Tiknu, and then it says Umi Mishpachtam, which means that a father, a goy, has the right to sell his sons and daughters. If
a parent, Abba, is misbehaving and selling his bito ktana shelo apidin, that can basically be memani apotropos to.
Probably, or sometimes every case is the case. Sometimes the fact that the father is not well, if the Adain is a healthier person, could be she's in a better setting. Like we mentioned, this is like a giving up for adoption. Or God forbid, we have living in a country that sometimes the government will decide, right, what's it called, protective services, that this family is not good for the kid, they find another family. If a goy, so that we began, a yid that had a relation with the Shifcha Kananis. Now a goy has a relation with her. Same thing. Hadei have been Evet Kanani. In other words, there is no paternal yichus by avodim. If the mother is a shivcha, the kid is a evet or a shivcha. Shenamad asher hilidu ba'artzechem. The point is that we understand we are referring to a shivcha kananis that belongs to a yid. That's the ba'artzechem. And when she gives birth, I don't care who the dad is. The child is an evet. Avad shalonu. In contrast, an evet kanani that has a relation not with a shivcha, with a goya. Ena bein evet. The evet ein layachas ein lichayis. Halacha dal. Melech goy. Another way there are ravadim. Now there are certain laws of war. It's amazing, right? The Torah says, "Thou shalt not murder." I want you to know that when nations go to war and soldiers kill each other, halachically, they're not violating murder. Even though you can say they're killing one, they're killing many. There are certain halachas of Muhammad. During a war, you can take captives. That's another way that someone can become an evet. That's not called kidnapping. Kidnapping is it's not as a country waging war against a neighbor. Huh? Melech goy she'asam l'chama. Vehevi shivyam, and he brings captives and he sells them. Right? That's not in violation of the 10 Commandments. V'chein, im hirsha, if the king allowed, when they are at war with the neighbor, the king says, okay, now that neighbor is at war with us, whoever wants can go and chop their people. And you can sell them and keep the money. You did this legally. It says with the permission of the government. If the rule of the government is whoever doesn't pay tax should be sold, or even if the king says whoever does so and so, whoever won't do so and so is allowed to be sold, that is the law. What are we excluding? We're excluding all of the slavery that you had in America in the beginning. That's not accepted. If to go where we're not at war with Africa, to go to that country and to chop people, that's a capital sin. These people don't have a din of an Evet Kanani. No one is allowed to buy them. If you bought them, they're not your avodim. You have to know how a person becomes an Evet halachically. Halachah. Goy shekana goy la'abdus. If a goy bought a goy la'abdus, in other words, the guy sold himself to a goy. I want you to know that that's only a financial transaction like kana gufay. All you own is masa yadav. Afal pikein im mochari li Yisrael. Then hadei gufi kana li Yisrael. Let me add a very important nuance. You know why it goes from a king and mammon to king and a guf yakir? I'll tell you why. The Kesef Mishnah adds, because you go to the mikvah. Notice when you take that person to the mikvah l'shem avdus, that makes a deeper connection. Halacha vav, the isha koine shvachis. A woman is allowed to acquire female servants. A woman is never allowed to acquire avadim. We already had this in the beginning, right? Even if they are minors, we'll see what age. Minors meaning we'll see some over 9 because of chashad. There's a suspicion that they'll have zunus. But if you bought them, however, the Rambam adds, he takes off this restriction. Who's 9 years old or 9 years and older. Less than 9, there's no chashad, and lechatchila she can buy. Halach, bite. No, simane adulthood is only when you're Yud Gimel Shana. But halachically, when does an act of bia? When is it defined as an act of bia? Only from 9 years old. Now,
9-year-old's going to be an 18-year-old.
So Yaron is taking a go. So enachanami. So then they're going to force her to free him or to sell him.
At 9?
By 9. By 9, Bezin will say, very nice. You did a good business. You bought the avadim for very cheap. Now go sell them to men. Now there's another rule. We're going to understand this. It says in the Chumash, loy sichanem, which means that giving something for free to a non-Jew is prohibited. There are many exceptions to it. If it's to your benefit, even if it's only for a rabbinic benefit, that's not loy sichanem. If I'm doing it also for me, but doing it purely for them is awesome. Unless you're making a Kiddush Hashem, like giving tzedakah to Goyim is a mitzvah because you're making a Kiddush Hashem. Or at least you're preventing Eva. Let's go over here. You can't free an Evet Kanani. You're violating a positive commandment, as it says in Parshas Bahar, that they should work for you. Lo'olam doesn't mean lo'olam shel yovel. Here, lo'olam means taka forever, means forever, for you, for your kids, for but even though you're not allowed to do it, it's on the gavra, it's not on the chafta. The imshechar right mishuchra, k'moshe b'yarnu, and once you free them, another thing. All of that is to do it only for them. But umuta l'shachar l'dvar mitzvah, even if it's from mitzvah shol divrayim, what's a rabbinic mitzvah? If you don't have 10 in the Beis HaKnesses, you need a minyan. Once he's freed, he's mechuyev to daven like a man, and therefore he makes part of the minyan. What's beautiful is that people can argue the isur of freeing him is a isur d'oraisa, and I say the need is only a rabbinic. How can a rabbinic need trump? So that's the word. That the reason why we understand lo'olam is because of lo'isichanim. The moment you free someone, not for them, but for you, I don't care if the need is not a biblical need. You're doing it for you, it's not prohibited. And therefore, she's a michshol lachatoim. And by freeing her, she'll become a bona fide Jewish woman. Someone is going to marry her, and all of that will be removed. That's not for her. That's for the greater good. Halacha zayin. This is the letter of the law. One who does so is causing their eved to die or to run away. But legally, a man can tell the eved, I bought you. That means you owe me your work. I don't have to feed you. Being that, Yaron, there's an obligation on the community to support all of the impoverished people, and they include Avadim Kananim. So if a person is going to take advantage of Jewish generosity by telling the eved, the guy says, if I'm working for you, all of my Ma'aser Yadayim goes to you. And you're not going to feed me, I'll die of hunger. Go knock on the doors. A person is allowed to do so. But I want you to know, if you're going to do that, this guy is running away or he'll die. The kid is thinking, you know where everyone does it? There's some sort of trigger by many people when it comes to tuition. They just can't pay tuition. They get triggered. The school cannot charge that tuition. The school has to pay teachers. Let the school fundraise. So what they say is, why should I pay tuition? The school anyways have to fundraise. Let them fundraise from others. Certain hanachas that we have until today that some people feel, why should I let the community pay? Yaron is looking at me.
You said this about the guy who cleans the house and he goes across the street to get free money. You want to get the schar for the stuff you do pay. You don't want to get the schar, the community.
I know. Okay, there we go.
No, but what did the master did in order to
acquire him? He paid money to Rabbi Zajac. In other words, in marriage, a man has a ksuba. I'm mechuyev to be zanam of finance as ishti. I'm mechuyev to be zanam of finance. Beat you, my sons until they're 6. Remember, and over 6. If I don't do it, the chachamim are going to beat me berabim. When it comes to an eved by the letter of the law, you're not mechuyev to do so. How can the guy live? Let the community worry with. But that is only applicable in your own avadim. She'ein bezdin niskakim legedolim lishma mamayim. If Beis Din sees that I'm behaving in a way that I am losing my money, Beis Din has no obligation to correct me because I'm an adult. If you're a guy who does this is reckless, we're not even looking from the Eved's perspective, which is he's cruel. There's a cruelty here, a Russia. We're speaking of reckless because if you have this type of relationship with an Eved and you don't give him his needs, either he'll die from hunger or he will run away. You will lose your possessions. But Beis Din doesn't have an achrayis. If someone is behaving recklessly, they don't have to step in. We are against big government. Everyone is responsible.
But this is only by Evet Knani.
Only by Evet Knani. By Evet Yachayim. More like Otazoi. Very good. If you're not going to give them whatever is karoi, they're going to run away or they're going to die. And in other words, we don't have to legislate this because it's in human nature for people to behave in a way where they're not going to lose their money. So if this guy is Meshuggah, if he was wired in an unhealthy way and he's behaving in a way, aside of the cruelty, that he's going to lose his Eved, Beis Din doesn't have the responsibility that, or I'm going to make sure you don't lose your money. They don't even belong to him. He only has the user fruit. Beis Din is going to tell him, no, you don't have the right to make your wife lose her money. You have to give him money. Because so it's not fair for the wife, for the husband during the marriage who was gifted the temporary user fruit rights. If you are doing something that's going to damage someone else's property, even your wife's, you're not allowed to do that. Halacha has the final halacha. Legally, you can give him excruciating labor. We already defined what that means. The Rambam gave 2 applications. Says the Rambam, Midas Chasidis. And even if you're not a Chassid, it's darkei HaChachma. Sheyeh Adam Rachman v'roidev tzedek. V'lo yachmid uloi al avdoi. V'lo yotzer loi. Don't even bring him distress. Meaning v'yachiloi v'yashkeu. Like by an Evedivri, right? That you're mechuyev. Here, you're not mechuyev, but you should give him from your food. Give him dignity. Actually, says that if they had a 5 course gourmet dinner, the Evet Kanani, they gave him from all of the 5 dishes. And not only that, they would only eat after they ate. By behemoths, you're obligated. By avodim, it was chachamim. It's a mid of chachma. And we're asking for God to look at us that way. Think about it. And if the behavior would be that the master would mistreat his avodim, we're praying for God to treat us because our eyes to our masters. No, because they're very humbled, and the master not only should, God forbid, not take advantage. The master should lift him up. Don't embarrass him. Not biyad, which means not with your deeds. Sometimes you embarrass people with what you do, not with verbally. Don't embarrass them. Why? Because la abdus misaran akasav. Yeah, they're obligated to serve you, but they're not subjugated for them to be embarrassed by you. Kevin is going to say, don't shout too much, which means at Epis you can shout. I know the way he thinks. Speak to him calmly. And when he has something what to say, listen to him. When the Torah is praising Eov, which he was the great man, and the Torah says that Eov was asking a rhetorical question. He was saying, "Im emas mishpat abdi va'amasi." But even Eov says, "Have I ever shunned justice for my slaves, even when they quarreled with me?" Well, sometimes people say, I have to listen to your tainus. Ich bin dein master. Eov was taking pride of the fact that even when his avadim quarreled with him, that was his tain on God, that he behaved properly. He says he did not shun them. He listened to them. Doesn't mean that we're always right, but he understood what it means to listen. Or where Eov was saying, "Haloi bebeten oiseini osou." In other words, was it not the one who prepared us in the womb by Yechoinenu berechem echad? Eov was saying, they're human, I'm human. Eov began with the premise, financially, they're my avodim, but essentially, we're equals. We are formed in the same womb. And not behaving this way is a need of being cruel. And the Rambam wants to remind us, cruelty. Azus means arrogance. Metsuya ela bagoyim ho'arelim. Avol zarei shel Avram Avinu. And lucky, that's us. Tehem Yisrael. Sheishpia HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahem toivas HaTorah. God granted us the goodness of the Torah. And God commanded us in the Chukim and the Mishpatim that are tzaddikim. We by nature are rachmanim. To all meaning to your avodim. Not only to others avodim. That's easy. To your avodim. That we are commanded to do what we could to be as similar as possible. It says Varachamav is what's a kol masav. And you should know, says the Rambam, whoever shows mercy to others will have mercy shown to him. As it says, God will be merciful to us, and God will multiply us. And Brich Rachmana Desayan, a huge mazel tov for people who concluded that Rambam at the end, that's a klal, prat uklal. Let's just go over to the final klal. Nigmar Sefer Shnei Maser Be'ezra Shindal Yud. The minyan aprakam of the Sefer was 75, and they are included in the laws of Mechira, 30 prakim, the laws of gifts, 12 prakim, the laws of neighbors, 14 prakim, the laws of Shluchim V'Shutzim, Asara prakim, and Hilchei Savadim Tisha prakim. Mazel tov, God willing. Tomorrow morning we are starting in the second to last Sefer Mishpatim.
Thank you, Rabbi Zajac. Thank you, Rabbi.